Hello everyone. Thank you for joining our R2SEP today. So before we start our agenda, let me inform you our webinar protocol to join this event. First, please adjust your name or ID screen using the given format. Second, during the event, please turn off your audio and only turn on the audio when the moderator gives a change. Third, turn on your camera. Fourth, ensure your network has a stable connection. Fifth, adjust the seat position comfortably and prevent the backlight event. An important note on attendance, please fill in the attendance form on this link, bit.ly/attendance_R2SEP 2021. And the link will be closed in 50 minutes. And second, fill in the feedback form shared 15 minutes before the session ends and closed after 1 hour. And third, attendance and feedback is compulsory for this purpose. First, mandatory attendance for ITS master and doctoral students new intake. Second, certificate of participation, eligible for international participants who have 60% attendance or minimal 5 meetings. And third, stamp for it, eligible for ITS undergraduate students. So let's start today's event. Welcome to Researcher and Research Student Engagement Session on today, Thursday of 10 June 2021. My name is Agatha Christine from ITS Corporate Engagement. And today I'll be your Master of Ceremony for this session. Participant who wish to ask question during the question and answer session, please send your question to the link that also be sent by our committee via the Zoom chat room. Okay, so today's lecture theme is about presentation skills, which will be delivered by our speaker, Dr. Said Omar, and Ms. Dian Mukni Felicia will be the one conducting today's session as our moderator. So now I will read a brief explanation of our moderator today, Ms. Dian Mukni Felicia, ST-MSc. So she is a lecturer in Materials and Metallurgical Engineering Department of ITS. She got her bachelor degree in Materials and Metallurgical Engineering Department of ITS and get the master program of light metal production from Department of Material Science and Engineering in Norwegian Institute of Technology, Norway. And her research interests are manufacturing technology, light metal production, and extractive materials. So now I would like to create our moderator today. Hello, Ms. Dian. I'm sorry, Miss, you're still mute.
Hello. Thank you,
Hello.
Agatha.
Okay, so are you ready?
Ready, absolutely. 100%.
Okay, so now without further ado, let's proceed to the main agenda to Ms. Dian as our moderator. All the time is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mbak Agatha, as a Master of Ceremony. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for me to be a moderator for today's researcher and research student enrichment program, a session hosted by Global Engagement ITS. So today's topic is a presentation skill, which will be presented by our honorable visiting lecturer, Dr. Zaid Omar, with the title Communication Science Lesson from FEM Lab and Beyond. So before we let Dr. Zaid to give some insight about the presentation skill, please allow me to read his short CV. So Dr. Zaid Omar has an academic and professional experience as a senior lecturer at School of Electrical Engineering, University Technology Malaysia. And then he has an educational background, PhD in Electrical Engineering, Imperial College London, UK, and Master of Science in Data Communication, University of Sheffield, UK, and then Bachelor of Engineering in Computers in from University Technology Malaysia, yeah. And he has several research interests: computer vision, medical imaging, machine learning, and image fusion. Okay, uh, I would like to remind all of you, all the participants, that a Q&A session will be held after the visiting lecture from Dr. Zaid Omar. So then you may write down your question in the chat box, or maybe you may also raise your hand to ask directly to Dr. Omar Zaid. Okay, without further ado, please welcome Dr. Omar Zaid. Dr. Omar Zaid, the screen and time is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Budian, for the kind introduction. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And how are you all, my dear friends from Indonesia? It is certainly very nice to be able to sit here on this fine day with all of you in order for us to go together through this very important topic for yourselves as researchers, as research students, as those in the scientific and the research community. Yeah? So before I proceed, allow me to just share my screen. Okay, so can you all see this? Yes, fantastic. Okay. All right, so the title of my talk today is Communicating Science, Lessons from FameLab and Beyond. And of course, you would notice that the title is a little bit different from the original title, which was Presentation Skills. Now, I do believe that these two titles, they are actually quite interrelated. I do believe that presentation skills can be thought of as so much more. Of course, that yourself as research students, as those who are undergoing research and about to do your vivas and graduate S2, S3, and so on, it's important for you to have presentation skills in order to convey your communication, to convey your science and your research. But I do feel also that the importance of conveying, of communicating your research and your science, it goes well beyond just your academic time or your undergraduate or your postgraduate for your master's or PhD only. But actually, it is a lifelong skill that each and every one of us who are in the science stream, who are in the engineering stream, must strive to improve and try to master the skills, because at the end of the day, we are scientists, we are engineers, and we are responsible for educating and conveying our research, our science, our knowledge, our specialty to the community and to the society and to the country. So that is the reason why I've decided to sort of go a bit of on a tangent and broaden the scope and the topic of our talk today to not just presentation skills, but also communicating science as a whole. And the reason I added FameLab is something that is very personal to me. I will tell you all about FameLab and what it is later on in the slides. Okay, so I hope you'll find out later about that. So a little bit about me. Dr. Budian has very kindly introduced me, my background, my research, my academic qualifications, and so on. Just a little bit about me. I like to introduce myself as academia is my vocation, engineering is my avocation, science communication is my passion, and I want to combine them all. And this is me, basically. I am a lecturer at the School of Electrical Engineering. So EE is my field. I graduated from Imperial College London way back in 2012 with a PhD in electrical engineering. I was also the former director of students at the Ministry of Higher Education in Putrajaya, Malaysia. And during that time, I worked together with your Ristek Dikti in Indonesia. And just before the pandemic happened, I actually arranged a visit to go to Ristek Dikti in Jakarta. But unfortunately, because of the pandemic, that visit didn't materialize. I was the champion of FameLab Malaysia in 2017. Again, I will explain to you what FameLab is basically. And I'm very active in science communication and science communication activities and groups. I'm a member of the Science Communication Working Group from a group or society that we call ourselves the Young Scientists Network, an association of young scientists here in Malaysia. I'm also a columnist for the New Straits Times newspaper in Malaysia. It's in English. And I've been conducting workshops and facilitating workshops for science outreach, for science education, science communication throughout schools and universities throughout Malaysia. And this is the first time I'm going international with this event here with ITS Surabaya. I must thank the people at ITS for kindly inviting me to give this talk. And I must say that actually my relations with ITS have spanned back quite a few years. I actually went to ITS Surabaya. I visited Surabaya. I went to ITS. I gave a guest lecture at the Department of Informatics in 2017. And I also visited I brought a group of school kids from Malaysia and we visited ITS. I remember we visited the gift shop and also the automotive workshop where you had the racing cars. So it was a nice experience, a wonderful experience, a beautiful campus that you have, and I'm very looking forward to maybe going back when the time permits and the pandemic has gone away. I really very much look forward to going back to your beautiful campus in Surabaya. So I talked about science communication. I said that it's related to presentation skills. So what is science communication actually? Well, allow me to show you an example.
To the judges, let us bring on our first sacrificial victim.
You all can hear the audio, yes?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Fantastic. So this is just a short video. Let's enjoy watching it together.
It's all chosen randomly, and as chance would have it, the very first of our 31 Tremi finalists is the one representing the current country champion, Malaysia, which kind of means that just like many of our MPs, the 2016 international winner, Abi Virakumara Sivam, is in his last day in office. And unlike them, he can't apply to be re-elected. So can Malaysia's 2017 winner, Dr. Zaid Omar, match Abi's achievement? He's certainly going to try. Zaid's a senior lecturer at the University Technology Malaysia, looking into understanding the future through his work on computer vision and artificial intelligence. He's a big movie fan, so he knows his machines have a long way to go to catch up with the ones we see in sci-fi films. He's also, in his own words, a long-suffering supporter of Newcastle United, so he's used to failure as well as success. But last month, Newcastle were crowned champions of the championship and are going back to the Premier League, so could that be a good Omar omen? Tough going first, so audience, crank it up a bit. Go crazier for Malaysia and the magpie mind of Dr. Zaid Omar.
We always take this for granted, but how do humans recognize faces? Well, in a way, the brain can be thought of as a very advanced computing machine. The brain receives input data from the eyes, in this case, a person's face. It then detects some important landmarks around the face, for example, skin color, eye color, size of nose and cheekbones. It then tries to match these landmarks to someone already in our brain database, and finally produce an output. This face belongs to my daddy, as my baby daughter would probably say. But when you think about it, isn't the reverse also true? Isn't the computer really just a basic version of the brain? And therefore, can we program the computer to perform facial recognition just like humans? Well, yes, we can. In fact, yes, we already did. Facial recognition software was used to track down the persons responsible for the Boston Marathon bombings in 2013. And let's not forget your embarrassing photos on Facebook, courtesy of the photo tagging feature. So facial recognition technology is very much part of our lives, but getting there was not easy. You see, the computer can perform basic tasks like multiplying huge numbers far better than humans. But when it comes to learning and intelligence, we are still miles ahead. So what sets us apart? What could be the X factor responsible for creating this intellect among the human race? Well, the answer lies in what is inside the brain. Billions of cells called neurons, and the special way they interact among themselves in a network formation. And these neurons are what computer engineers are trying to emulate. This is called the neural network, a computer algorithm that takes inspiration from real neurons in our brain. And this is the real magic behind facial recognition technology. Guys, this is the epitome of superbrain computing. Neural network is considered intelligent precisely because it mimics the human brain. A single neuron on its own is pretty basic, but lots and lots of neurons connected together, that allows for more advanced and complex processing to take place and achieve real artificial intelligence. Think of it like this. If I throw a pebble into a pond, it will create plain, circular ripples on the water. If I throw two pebbles together, when the ripples collide, a new shape will emerge, a V. Therefore, isn't it also plausible that if I throw a huge amount of pebbles in a specific way into the pond, I can make the ripples create a far more complex shape, like a picture of a house, for example. And that analogy is how computers utilize neural networks to perform facial recognition. These facial landmarks are like the pebbles that are fed into the network, where the ripples mix and mingle to finally produce an output. Match, frown, face equals Zaid, Omar. A neural network is so good, it's on par with even our ability to recognize faces. Neural network is the key to the future of artificial intelligence, and it all begins here. Thank you very much.
Okay, guys, so that is just one example of science communication. And it's an example of me giving a speech at the FameLab competition. So what is FameLab? It's actually the world's biggest and oldest science communication competition. It was started in 2010, so it's been here for around like 10 years or so, where participants are required to present a scientific topic of their choice in just 3 minutes in the most interesting and creative way possible. So that is sort of my attempt at doing science communication. So obviously from this, you can probably guess that science communication is just us as a scientist, as someone who is knowledgeable in our field of research or our field of science. And we are trying to convey that, we are trying to communicate that, we are trying to present that to someone who is not an expert, someone who doesn't yet know about our work, our research, and so on. So how do we convey that? How do we make the audience, make the listener understand and accept and able to take in everything that we communicate, everything that we convey? That is science communication. And when you think about science communication, of course, you can think about the formal side of science communication. So think about the formal settings where science communication can take place. It can be in a science communication competition, like what I mentioned, FameLab, or even 3-minute thesis, and so on. It can be when you are presenting to a grant committee in order to secure a research grant, for example. Or it can also be when you're presenting for your final year project seminar. Or it can be when you're presenting for your viva voce examination for your STIGA and so on. It can also be when you are a lecturer, so you have a knowledge of this course that you're teaching this semester. So you're trying to convey that to your students in the classroom. So that is also science communication. And it can also be in the form of conference papers and journal papers where you're trying to convey, where you're trying to, explain your findings and your research to the readers. Science communication can also be informal. So think about an elevator pitch where it's a scenario, it's an imaginary scenario whereby what happens, what if, imagine that you are stuck in an elevator for just a few seconds with the CEO of a technology company or with the venture capitalist. And how do you pitch your research or your idea to him or her in order to secure something from them? You only have a couple of seconds. So in that few seconds of informal time, what do you say, what do you do in order to secure what you want? That is an elevator pitch. It can also be on social media. So how How do you address yourself on social media? How do you conduct yourself on social media? You want to share your work, you want to share your research, you want to fight the fake news, the pseudoscience on social media. How do you tailor your content on that? That is also science communication. And it can also be in a very, very informal setting, like for example, Hari Raya, Aidil Fitri, you go to open house and you eat makan-makan, and your auntie or your grandmother asks, oh, so Zaid, what are you doing now? What is your research about? So obviously your grandmother, your auntie is someone, a lay person who doesn't know about your research. So how do you tone down your research in a manner that he or she may be able to understand? That takes science communication skills actually. So all these are valid and examples of science communication. So you can see that it's actually a very wide spectrum that involves different settings, different types of communication, different requirements, and so on. But the most important thing is that all of these require us as the expert trying to convey and trying to communicate our work, trying to communicate a scientific subject to the audience and the listeners. So when I talk about science communication, I think about three very importance of science communication. First is in the long term. So of course, you want to inspire a new generation of STEM professionals. Maybe in 20 years time, 30 years time, what you are saying now to the kids, to the children and the school kids, you may inspire them to maybe take up the mantle and become scientists and STEM professionals in the future to drive our nation, to drive our region's development and prosperity. That's for the long term. The medium term is addressing global challenges, including pollution, global warming, deforestation, climate change, and overpopulation, and so on. So all these require consistent effort in order to help beat off and help sustain our planet against all these global challenges. And that takes consistent effort in the medium term. And also in the short term. So even right now, you want to fight the infodemic, you want to fight the fake news, you want to fight the pseudosciences, the anti-vaxxers, and so on, and help the government, help the institutions make science-based decisions and policies that are best for everyone. So that really takes science communication. And just looking at the status quo, even now, I'm sharing this for my country of Malaysia, we are still very much behind. We are still very much lagging in, promoting science to our nation. A lot of our kids are still not taking science. They're not finding science interesting enough. It's very hard, and that does not bode well for the future of our country, because we are going to need scientists, we are going to need engineers, technologists to help sustain our country in the future. So science communication should be part of the effort to address and combat these. So like I said, our kids, they are not, well, a lot of them are not finding science as interesting enough. They're looking at science, they're looking at technology, they're looking at STEM as boring, as difficult, as dry, whereas that's not true. You and I know that's not true, because we deal with science every day and we find how beautiful it is. So what's the problem here? Well, there are many factors, but one of it is that person right there in the circle, is that this guy is not just a teacher, but think of him as everyone who are associated with science, myself included. So if we together as a community, as a scientific community, we don't communicate science well enough, then the future, our kids are not going to sustain our scientific development and our nation's development of the future. And that is a very dangerous thing, because you have this bad consequence of society ignoring science. So this is actually a picture from a newspaper in the 19th century. So it's actually a picture or a caricature, a cartoon of people who are taking the vaccine in the 19th century. They get cows grown from their nose and from their limbs, and so on. So this is actually a propaganda of anti-vaxxers. So even in the 19th century, you have anti-vaxxers going, writing and drawing these caricatures. So where are the scientists who can fight these combat? So these are the very real consequence of society ignoring science. We risk the possibility of our society being inundated with all these terrible accusations and so on. Okay. Now, I'm going to do a little quiz. Okay. I am going to show some pictures of famous people, and I want you all to guess who they are. Okay, can we do that? Let's try. Okay. First off, this guy. Anyone wants to try a guess? Can we have a response? Can we do the audio response? Otherwise, I'll just give the answer lah. So this guy, actually, his name is Professor Kip Thorne, and he's a theoretical physicist at the California Institute of Technology, Caltech. And his contribution to science is that he founded gravitational waves. He proved the existence of gravitational waves, thereby proving Albert Einstein's theory. And for that, he was jointly awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics in 2017. And this is him when he was young, and this is part of his work. You can see that this thing and this thing, it looks like something. Do you know what it is? Can you guess what this thing looks like?
A black hole?
Yes, exactly. And another word for black hole, scientists also believe that black hole is actually a wormhole. So wormhole, so if this is a black hole, this is a wormhole whereby that if you enter the black hole from this side of the universe, you can do a shortcut and appear at the other side of the universe. And this theory, this work has been featured in a popular film in Hollywood. Anyone wants to guess? No? The answer is Interstellar. So Interstellar is all about black holes and wormholes. And actually, Professor Kip Thorne, he was the scientific advisor, scientific consultant to the movie Interstellar. So actually, the science of the movie Interstellar is actually correct. Okay, so that's Kip Thorne. What about this one? I think this is very easy for you to guess. Very famous couple in Hollywood.
Kim.
So obviously it's Kim Kardashian and Kanye West. Well, they've split up now, but anyway, this one. I'll give you a clue.
Isaac Newton.
Isaac Newton, correct. Isaac Newton. So he founded the laws of gravity. Yeah. This one. Another clue.
Galileo.
Galileo Galilei. So he proved that the Earth was not the center of the universe. So he created a telescope to make his evidence. This one in the 20th century. The clue is here. This one. And
Tim
his
Berners.
work. Exactly.
Tim Berners.
Wow, I'm very impressed that you got that right. So this is Sir Tim Berners-Lee, and what is his claim to fame? He is actually the founder of the internet, the inventor of the internet, the World Wide Web, and his work has paved the way for us to communicate and conduct this workshop online. Actually, thanks to Sir Tim Berners-Lee. So he invented the World Wide Web, the internet, in 1990 while he was working in CERN in Switzerland. And I was fortunate enough to visit CERN in 2017, and I visited the exact place where the internet was born. Alhamdulillah. So guys, that exercise was just to show that, you know, how easy for us to recognize an artist or a superstar or a celebrity, but when it comes to scientists, it's a little bit easier. It's a little bit harder. Whereas these should be the superstars of science of our time, you know. So just the society's appreciation towards science that experiment goes to show. Now, when we think about scientists, unfortunately, popular culture and popular media has shown over the years in movies, in films, in TVs, and so on, scientists tend to be very dorky, very geeky, ugly, you know, with the big glasses and buck tooth teeth, the jongang and so on, jongongs and so on, and you know, not very appealing, not very interesting at all. But however, that is not the case. Scientists can be wonderful. Scientists can be handsome. Scientists can be cool. On the left here are the recipients of the L'Oreal Woman in Science Award. And look at these ladies. They are beautiful as hell, but smart and brainy as hell as well. And on the right here, what does this guy look like? With a cap and a beard and a hoodie and a mic. What do you think he looks like?
Some rapper.
A rapper. He looks like a rapper, right? Well, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. He is actually a rapper, but he is a science rapper. He raps about science. His name is Alex Lethbridge, and he is a friend of mine from the UK. And you can check him out on YouTube and Twitter and so on. He raps about science. It's amazing, this guy. And there's another video I would like to show. It's a video of Conan O'Brien, which is a very popular TV anchor or TV host, talk show host in America. And this time he has a special guest for his shows. Let's have a look.
This hadron, am I pronouncing it correctly? Hadron?
Yeah, hadron, hadron. Yeah, tomato, tomato. It smashes things together.
Okay, I guess none of it really matters. Yeah. I'm not even going to call it the Higgs particle anymore. But I'm curious, this thing that simulates the Big Bang, I read an article, and I don't know if it's true, that you guys, when you turned this thing on and rammed these protons into each other, you weren't quite certain what was going to happen, and that there was a small possibility that something could go very wrong. True or not true?
In the technical language, that's bollocks. Bollocks is what the English person would say. It's nonsense.
How dare you,
Absolute
sir?
Nonsense.
How dare you?
It's nonsense.
How dare you say bullocks to me on my show?
It was, as far as I can tell, made up by the press. What it did was make CERN famous.
Oh, okay. Because I remember reading about it, that you guys had built this giant thing, you were going to ram some particles together, and there was a bit of a chance that a black hole would form and would all get sucked into it, but you were like, let's see what happens.
It was worth it, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was worth it. Okay, so you're...
Okay, so that's just an example of how science in the West, in America, is popularized. So you can have actual scientists, actual professors, and this guy's name is Professor Brian Cox. He's a very famous scientist in the UK. And he was invited to a talk show, a primetime talk show in the US, where the host, Conan O'Brien, is very interested and very knowledgeable and aware of the latest findings in science. So they were talking about the Large Hadron Collider in CERN in Switzerland and so on. So it was made very popular. It was made on prime time. There was huge interest. And that is the level of science awareness that we want to sort of achieve and aspire to for our countries in Malaysia and Indonesia. So as my friend, Mr. Ahmad Farami says, and he's a Malaysian lecturer in media studies, he says to develop as a science nation, there needs to be an advocacy for science appreciation, especially in our local media. Science is treated as pop culture. The discovery of black holes or gravitational waves is discussed and appreciated in major talk shows. Scientists are made popular and given rock star status for the younger generation. It's high time we move on from the cheap entertainment of Instagram and Insta-famous celebrities and Malay teledramas. Boom. So for me, these are my science heroes. I'm sure that, you know, for yourself, you have yours as well. So let's popularize them together, and let's start to popularize science together for the betterment of our nation, of our for our global together. So the first sort of takeaway lesson that I can give you is that we need every one of us to communicate science together, inshallah. All right. So that ends my first part. Second part, why science communication? All right. So this is maybe some of this has been touched previously, why science communication is important and so on. I'm just going to go further deep into the concept of science communication. When you talk about science communication, there are several myths, several impressions or perceptions that people tend to have, which turns out to be incorrect or wrong in a way. First of all, is that all STEM professionals automatically know about science communication. So just because you're working in as an academia, you're a lecturer, suddenly you know about communicating science. You're excellent at communicating your science. But I know that that may not be true. I think every one of us has grown up experiencing boring lectures, sleeping in class because the lecturer is the lectures are too boring and so on. So that is not an effective science communication. Okay. So science communication is a skill, actually. As with any other skill, it may not just be born with it. You know, so it's not a matter of either you have it or you don't. It's a skill. So because it's a skill, it can be nurtured, it can be trained, you can practice it. And if you practice it long enough, you become good at it. So that is science communication. Thirdly, is that people tend to think that science communication can only be done one way. There's only one module, there's only one method to do science communication. It must be this way, it cannot be any other way. So that is all not true. Science communication is a skill, so there are many, many ways to learn this skill. There is my module, there is some others, there's, you know, you enter competitions, tournaments, and so on. You practice, you go to workshops, you read a lot, and so on. So there is not actually one way to do science communication, but what I'm sharing with you today, it might be one of the ways, you know. So even after we finish this workshop together, maybe you go home and maybe then some other day you'll find another science communication workshop and so on. It's perfectly okay to go attend there and learn new stuff and new methods and so on, because there's always something new to learn in science communication every day. And the same goes for me as well. I always learn something new in my science communication career. So number 4 is that science communication is public speaking. So that's not true. Science communication is not just public speaking. Yes, public speaking is part of science communication, but science communication also has that extra element of you are trying to convey something that is very difficult, a scientific topic, a technical topic that has that element of how do you want to break this down in a manner that people can understand it. So there is that extra element of public speaking. And also science communication may not be done just through public speaking alone, may not just be done verbally. It can be done on social media, you type something. So how you present that in writing, that's also science communication. And finally, the myth that science communication activists or advocates only care about their own field, that's not true. So we tend to believe that we are part of one big science community. So we tend to help each other out. So myself, I'm in electrical engineering, I do artificial intelligence, but that does not mean that I'm ignoring, you know, the advocates of vaccines, the advocates of those COVID and so on. So I feel that it is my responsibility as a scientist to help disseminate and to help propagate the correct information about vaccines, about COVID-19, and so on. So we tend to help each other out regardless of our own field of specialty. Okay. So moving on, there's this Greek guy from like 2,000, 3,000 years ago. His name was Aristotle. So he's actually the father of philosophy. And he came up with a very interesting idea of a triangle. So basically what he's saying is this: whenever you're trying to convey something, whenever you're trying to talk, there are three elements that you must consider. The first is called ethos. So ethos has something to do with your credibility as a speaker. So if you are credible, so like, he has a PhD, he has a experience in blah, 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 and so on, people will tend to believe him more because they believe that he is a credible speaker. So that relates to ethos. So you're the speaker. Secondly is the logos. Logos means the logic or your argument, what you are trying to convey. So the context or the content of your presentation or your argument. So how good it is, how strong it is, how argumentative, how good your arguments are. That will, the acceptance of the audience will depend on how good your logos are. So logos relates to the content. And thirdly, and unfortunately, this one is the most overlooked aspect, is the pathos. Pathos, it lends to the idea of emotion and passion and the feelings of the audience. So pathos speaks to the audience and tries to find a way to their heart. So if ethos and logos is more of the speaker side, pathos, it's the speaker trying to understand the audience and trying to find out their background, what are their wants, what are their concerns. So it's an important element that unfortunately is often overlooked in whenever we're trying to communicate our science or present our presentation and so on. So that's just a little reminder. So with that in mind, we as science communicators, people in science communication, we always have to begin with ourselves. So before even we go out and looking outside and wanting to convey and whatnot, try to look inside ourselves and try to think and find reason and justify, why do I want to convey this? Why do I want to present this topic? Why do I want to communicate this argument or communication or this topic or this scientific stuff or whatever? So there are 5 C's that I always use to begin our science communication journey. And these 5 C's are basically 5 words that all begins with C's that we as science communicators must have within ourselves before we go out and venture out to do science communication. So the first one is curiosity. So we have to acknowledge that as science communicators, we maybe do not have the knowledge on everything. We do not know everything. We do not know all things about everything. We may be experts or knowledgeable in one very narrow particular field of our own research, but all the others we do not know. And the first thing is to acknowledge that we may not know everything and be curious enough so that maybe the audience may have also something that they can share with us. Maybe when I'm speaking, maybe when I'm communicating, I acknowledge that maybe the audience, the listener, has something that they can teach me as well. Number 2 is collaboration. So of course, when you are if you're curious enough and you open yourself to learn about other stuff and so on, the second is to collaborate with other people. So collaboration, it can reduce blind spots by working together. Number 3, of course, so when you're collaborating, there may be frictions, you may disagree, you may fight with one another and so on. But always remember, it's important to have calmness and to be able to laugh at your own blind spots. Oh, maybe they are right after all, or maybe I'm mistaken, and try to take it with a little bit of humor and heart. Number 4 is creativity. So now you're working together, now you have calmness, you're curious, but if you want to reduce and shrink further your blind spots in order to sort of broaden your horizon, Shrinking your blind spots require playing with your perspectives. So you must have that creative mind, creative eye to look at an issue, to look at a perspective, how you want to present from various perspectives. And finally, the last one, it's courage. So it takes courage to talk to someone. It takes courage to go on stage and present your topic. It takes courage to be able to stand in front of a committee and present your viva, present your final year project, and so on. So without courage, all the other forces you cannot achieve. So you must have that courage to start with. Okay. So with the what is science communication, the whys of science communication settled, now I want to just go into how can we do science communication. And I suppose now this is the meat of our sharing session. So basically, how to do presentation skills. So how to do science communication. So the first thing to remember is that when you are communicating your science, when you become a science communicator, you are doing three things. First is that you are being an ideologue. What is an ideologue? It's a very amazing and important thing. You know, you have to realize that when you are talking and when you're communicating your science, what you're doing is that by just moving your mouth and producing words out of thin air, billions and billions and thousands of minds in the room and across the world and so on, they can change just like that. Just by moving your mouth, the neurons in everyone's minds and brains, the cells, brain cells in everyone's mind, they begin to exhibit the same kind of brain pattern. And when these brain patterns, they converge and they link together and so on, that is when an idea begins to form. And if you have similar ideas, all the ideas combined together, they make up your perspective and your worldview. So it's very important, actually, what you're doing, your task is conveying your idea into other people. So that is what an ideologue is. So please don't forget your role when giving this talk, giving this presentation, is being an ideologue. Number two is you are a storyteller. So take a look at this picture of this person, this uncle telling a story to the kids. Look at the uncle's gestures and demeanor. So his face is excited. His hands is moving all about. His posture is, and he is really believing in the moment that when he's telling his story, he really believes in it. And when he believes in it, all the kids also, all the audience also believe in it. Look at the kids' expression. Look at their reaction. Look at their faces filled with wonder and amazement. So that is what you are as a science communicator. You are a storyteller as well. So you are telling the story, you're telling this narrative. So you have to make the audience believe in it. And how you make the audience believe in it is that you must lift yourself up and project this believability to the audience. You have to act it out in a performance that of a storyteller. And number three, of course, is that you are also a salesman. So a salesman, for example, this gentleman here, he's trying to sell you something. So the audience, if you are a salesman, the audience is the customer. Now, if the customer do not buy your product, whose fault is it? It's never the fault of the customer. They have no obligation whatsoever to buy your product. So it is your responsibility as a communicator, as a salesman, to sell your product, to sell your idea, to sell your content, to sell your presentation to the audience so that they buy it. So however much you want to convey, you want to sell, you want to promote in the most interesting, meaningful way possible, the acceptance of the audience is determined, is dependent upon how good you are as a salesman. And another thing about salesmen is that there can be no second chance for a salesman. So imagine if you are a salesman, you go knocking door to door of every house, knock, knock, you go to one door. There's no way of you actually recreating that encounter with the potential customer. You only have one chance to impress the customer. You will never get this situation, this meetup again. So what you do with that one chance is very important. So 3 things as a science communicator: you are an ideologue, you are a storyteller, and you are also a salesman. So with that in mind, I have 5 tips to share with you on how can you become a great science communicator or a great presenter. First tip is jargon. Jargon. What is jargons? Jargons are specific terminologies that are used in your own field of research. Now, here's the thing. Because each of us have been immersed for years and years in our own field, we tend to use these jargons, these words, these very technical words, very liberally and casually. And we don't mind it because we have been so used to it. We encounter it every day for years and years and years. And we don't seem to realize that we've developed this bias. And even with people who are not familiar with these words, we tend to use them nonetheless. So for example, I have a friend who is a fantastic science communicator, an amazing science communicator. But unfortunately, I heard his presentation one day, and he talked, and he was supposed to be presenting to lay people, and he was talking about biomarkers, all right? So I have unfortunately no idea what biomarkers are. And considering that I am a lecturer in academia, I have a PhD, I have a master's, and I'm okay with my English, but even I don't know what biomarkers are. So I don't blame this friend of mine because it seems to be a bias that we don't tend to realize when we sort of explain our work and so on. So when people ask, so what do you do? So you suddenly go into autopilot mode and just list down your topic. So I work with Chebyshev polynomials on a technical image fusion with GLCN technique, texture-based, blah, 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 recognition, and so on. Well, that may be good for you, but unfortunately for the person asking, it's just one way in and masuk telinga kanan, keluar telinga kiri sahajalah. So be very mindful of jargon when you are speaking when you're telling your words, your research. And this is an example. Oops, sorry. We as academics, we tend to be very pompous, and we like to use as technical and as complex terms as possible. So something as simple as 1 + 1 = 2 can eventually be this very long equation here. And this is entirely correct. This is exactly this. However, because we want to be more complicated and complex, and even if you read the IEEE conferences and journals and so on, you can see that, as much as possible, we want to give it as complex as possible, right? So that is very unfortunate, whereas science should be made accessible and easy to understand. Another example here, this is from my friend, Dr. Sam Illingworth in the UK. So he took a research paper with an abstract that looks like this, okay? So you can basically just read through mountain glacier, significant contributor, blah, blah, blah. Like most of mountain glaciers, those wetland, blah, 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 and so on. We can try to read it, and it doesn't probably make sense entirely. We may never fully understand it. But Dr. Sam here, he is a science poet. So what he does is that he takes scientific concepts, very difficult scientific concepts, and he breaks them down into poems. So this abstract is broken down into poems. In Canada, a study found how glaciers melt in the West. The shrinkage is beyond profound, with 70% at best. If we ignore the Earth's request, then 95% will go, New barren lands will not be dressed with climate change too warm for snow. The alpine streams and sapphire lakes, they too will go. Now, just comparing this one and this one, which is more accessible to the public? Which do you think will inspire more, confidence and interest in the research? This one or this one? Obviously, it's this one. So my point here is about breaking down our difficult technical terms into something that is more accessible and easier for people to understand. Now, here is an example. So it's an activity called Upgoer 5. So there is this website, splasho.com/upgoer5, is a text editor, okay? So what this text editor does, what this text editor does is that it will only allow, can you see? Hold on. Okay, this one. Okay. So what this text editor does is that it will only allow the 1,000 most commonly used words in English. So try to explain. So this is an example for you to do that you can practice. If you want to explain your work, your research, or your presentation or whatever, so try to use this to guide you. So I will make an example. I work in computer vision and artificial intelligence. Okay. So it says here, you have used non-permitted words. So vision, I cannot use. Artificial, I cannot use. Intelligence, I cannot use. So find some other words in order to replace that. So I work with pictures on computer and computers that are smart. Oh, smart cannot, that are clever. Clever cannot. Okay. I work with pictures on computers, for example. So that's just an example that maybe you can use when you want to practice presenting your topic. So try to find words that are easier to understand, easier for the layperson to understand, rather than going very deep into, you're using your technical terms and so on. Because the more the more common words used, the better the audience will be able to understand. We don't know how much the audience knows. So maybe they understand fully like you, maybe they understand half if you use these technical terms too much. So to be safe, try to use as less words, as low-level words as possible. And this activity, the Splash Show Upgoer 5, is a very amazing example. And there's a very interesting story behind this activity as well. You can go to, you can maybe just Google Upgoer 5 and find out the story behind it. It's very fantastic. It has to do with this space rocket here. Okay. Tip number 2 that I can probably share is something called chunking. So chunking is a technique used in debates, used in public speaking, used in arguments. Basically, you are breaking down one topic, either breaking down further or you're breaking it up. All right. So chunking can consist of chunking up or chunking down. Chunking up is you're going more towards an abstract of that topic. So you can probably say, in terms of chunking up, what is this topic an example of? All right. Whereas chunking down is that you're breaking down the topic into more smaller specific. So you're towards more specific. So you can probably ask, what is an example of this topic? So I'll give you an example. Let's take cars. Car, okay? Car, kereta. So kereta, cars. So this is the topic of cars. I'm going to talk to you about the topic of cars. So an example car would be the Honda Civic. The Honda Civic, it has 4 tires. It has a VTEC turbo engine. Honda Civics can come in many different colors. The variants of Honda Civic is 2.0, 1.8 turbo, and so on. So these are all chunking down. I'm giving from the topic of cars, I'm going into Honda Civic, and I'm going to break it down further into the specifics of the Honda Civic. Chunking up, meanwhile, Honda Civic, we start with cars. So Honda Civic is an example of a car. A car is an example of vehicles that can also consist of other vehicles such as trains, planes, ships, bicycles, and so on. So all of these vehicles are mode of transportation whereby they allow the user, they allow us mobility to go from one place to the next. So the form of transportation is actually a form of spatial location between one place and the next on this geometric earth and so on. So that is an example of chunking up. So you're going further and further up. So further up, further down, chunking up, chunking down. Okay, so that's just example of how you can do it. So of course there are more meaningful examples. You can find more examples of chunking up, chunking down on the internet, on YouTube, and so on. Right? This is just some examples. So from the topic of motorcycles, so you can break it down into motorcycle parts or also motorcycle categories. And then if you're chunking up, so it's like getting around, movement, existence, and so on. Okay.
I'm sorry, Dr. Zaid.
Yes?
It's still in Google.
So I have 3 more tips, and then I'll be finished.
Yeah, the
So,
screen is still in Google. It's open. It's not your slide.
oh, sorry.
Yes, you still have 8 minutes left. It's okay.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you, Budia.
Yes.
So is this correct?
Yes, great.
Okay, so we were from activity Upgoer 5. So like I mentioned, there is a very interesting story behind this activity. You can Google it, Upgoer 5. It has to do with this spaceship, this rocket here. And the second tip, like I said, is chunking. So chunking up and chunking down. So like I did the example from motorcycles, chunking up, and motorcycles chunking down. So that's just some tips of how you want to manage your content and design your content. Tip number 3 is Marie Kondoing your science. Anyone knows who Marie Kondo is? So if you have Netflix, you probably know Marie Kondo. She is a personality, a TV personality on Netflix. She has her own show whereby she goes around and cleans other people's houses. So whenever she goes into someone's house, she will ask for this person, okay, she pick up one stuff or this stuff. Does this possession spark joy? Does this bring you joy? And if the person says no, then you just throw it away. So the basic philosophy of Marie Kondo is that if something is, like you're just keeping it for memory's sake or just because of sentiments and so on, you might as well just lose it. So your house becomes much more cleaner, much more freer, and so on. So the same goes with your presentation. So you don't need too many points, too many things on your slides or whatever, and also on your script. Less is better. So throw out the unnecessary elements. So the first example would be something like this, whereby you look at your slide, so many words, and there's even a card, there's a picture in the background. So this is totally overwhelming to the reader. So please don't do your slides like this. Or it can be something like this, whereby you're just copy pasting everything from your report into the slide. And what's worse is you just read one by one every word of that, and without even looking at the audience. So please, please, please do not do that. Or even you do something as you want to fit everything into one diagram. So your diagram might be looking lovely, it's a beautiful diagram, but unfortunately there's so many things going on, I don't even know where to start or where to look for, and so on. So the point here is that please keep your presentation clean. And not just for presentation as only. Think about your talk, think about your script. There is a term in science called windbagging. So windbagging is where the talker, the speaker, he talks and talks and talks so much, but without really saying anything of value. So in Bahasa Melayu, we call it gebang. Or in Singaporean English, they call it talking cock. I don't know in Indonesia you call it. So you just, in Bahasa Melayu, we even call it goreng. So you just talk and talk and talk. Now, the problem with this is that imagine that you have a cup, an empty cup, and imagine you have a bottle of water, full of water. So this bottle filled with water is you as the speaker. The water is the knowledge that you want to impart to the audience. And the cup, the empty cup, is the audience. So what you do is you fill the cup with water. You're giving the audience knowledge with your speak, with your talk, with your content, blah, blah, blah. And as you fill the cup is, from empty, it goes half full, it goes full, and it spills to the floor, to the ground. And when that happens, something called TMI happens. That is too much information. So you keep talking and talking and filling and filling and filling until the audience cannot accept anymore. They're completely full. So regardless of whether you keep talking and so on, it's pointless. It's useless because you have been talking too much information. So of course that's what we don't want. So please keep our content clean and tidy. Okay. So tip number 4 is something called audience profiling. And I'd like to share the video here.
My name is Bobby Casturi. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Chicago and a neuroscientist at Argonne National Labs. What the connectome is it's a kind of a newly made up term for describing a kind of neuroscience research where we try to map the brain at a scale that's never been mapped before. Every person here can leave with understanding it at some level.
Do you know why we're here today?
Because we're talking about science.
Yes, we're going to talk about science, and we're going to talk about a very specific kind of science about people who study brains. Do you know what a brain is? What is it?
Something that helps you remember things.
Definitely. So what we're going to talk about is something that people study in the brain called the connectome.
Oh.
Do you know that your body is made up of really tiny things called cells?
Yes, I know that.
Okay, well there's more cells in your brain, like way more cells than all the stars we can see. And so what the connectome is we'd like to know where every cell in your brain is and how it talks to every other cell in your brain.
Oh.
That was awesome, Daniel, thank you.
Connectome?
Connectome.
To be honest, I have no idea.
That's good. That's a great place to start. There are cells in your brain. Those brain cells are connected by wires to each other. Electricity travels down those wires and communicates from one part of the brain to the other part of the brain. And each of those brain cells makes 1,000 connections, something like 100 trillion connections.
Okay, that's for 13-year-olds.
Do you think that there's
this is
ways
with
of resolving
expert
what
in the
the
field.
substrate of human memory is? Is it just LTP and LTD?
I'm not sure if you had a connectome of a human brain, of an adult human, I would be able to read out memories from that.
You don't think it's
wiring
just
diagram.
the synaptic weights, like an artificial neural network gets trained to do particular
It could
things?
absolutely be, but without knowing what the weights were before the memory was made.
What if you had a violinist learn a piece of Bach music? And
Yes.
Okay, so this video just goes to show the example, and it reinforces my earlier point about jargons, is that how you communicate with an audience of the various backgrounds, various age, and so on is different. So if your audience consists of school kids and so on, of course you have to talk to them in a different way. If your audience is consisted of experts in your particular field, of course how you talk to them is different. So my point is that it's important to research and find out about your audience. So audience profiling. There is a very interesting story about Abraham Lincoln, the president of the United States in 18 something, when he wanted to give his famous speech in Gettysburg. He prepared a very long speech, but the day before he was due to give that speech, he asked his assistant to go around the town, the city, and just take a look at the people that are going to be his audience. And when the assistant came back and told him, in the end, Abraham Lincoln, he changed his script, his speech totally to just become very short, but very impactful. And it has become one of the most famous speeches in history, the Gettysburg Address, just by audience profiling. So an audience, whenever they are reading or whenever they are listening to your presentation, they are always going to ask, so what? So you talk about this, so what? What's in it for me? So what benefit is this topic going to give me? So take a look at this research article. So the article is, the abstract of this article is pretty much, good enough. So there's that mystery, the methods and the results, the finding and so on. But do you think that this article will gain any attention if it's written in this way, gain any attention outside of the research community? I don't think so. So instead of writing like this, why don't we write like this? Cloud making aerosol could devastate polar sea ice. And that is one of the lessons of audience profiling. Is always we convey our science with audience in mind, in trying to attract to them what is the importance, what is the urgency of what we are trying to do, our research, our science, our technical, and so on. Okay. And number 5, and this is my final tip, is the delivery. So I would probably say that most of you are sort of looking forward to this part because this is essentially presentation skills. I purposely put this at the very end because I do not believe that it is important, but I do not believe that it is the most important. So all the points that are preceding it, the whys, the hows of science communication, and so on, are equally as important for us to know about in order to move forward in our science communication career. So this is me in one of my presentation, public speaking. So I have set a few tips that I want to share with you. First of all, in terms of eye contact. So eye contact is a very sensitive and important element that unfortunately most of us, when we are nervous, we tend to look up, we tend to look down, we tend to look all over the place except at the faces of the audience. So do not blink too much, do not look all over the place because it shows signs of nervousness. What you should do instead is to try to make contact for 3 seconds, looking at one section or one face of the audience, connect with him only for 3 seconds, and then move on. Another 3 seconds to here. and then move on, 3 seconds to here, move on, and so on. So that is what I call the 3 seconds eye contact rule. And I'm fully aware that it's very hard to do right now with just presentation on video calls and so on. But hopefully when the pandemic ends, we are going back to gathering together again, physical gathering, and we can present to each other in person. This tip may prove useful. Second is posture. So again, when you're nervous, you tend to sway. What is sway? So you're shifting your balance between one feet and the next. So you tend to stand like this. Well, you can't see it, but you tend to shift your weight between one feet and the next. And that's not good because it shows sloppiness and it shows your nervousness. So what you should do instead is that when you walk up stage, try to imagine that your feet is locked and lock your feet into position. And remember your feet is locked into that position. So you're standing there, so stand firm and you can sort of present with your feet firmly on the ground. Also, if you feel that you're comfortable, you can take a measure of the stage in front of you and try to walk around if it makes you feel comfortable and it eases you. In terms of filler, so this is something that I tend to do sometimes as well. You know, when you're between sentences, you tend to say so these are called fillers. Like that. So it's kind of annoying, and I'm fully aware that I tend to do it myself sometimes. But an important alternative, what you can do instead, is do silence. Silence is a much better filler because it shows suspense. When you're talking between one word and the next, and you're just stopping for that brief pause of silence, the audience will be hooked and they are eagerly waiting for the next word to come out from you. So that is silence as a better filler. Number 4, your hands. So please don't fold your arms or put your arms in your pocket. And we tend to notice if you do that. I've seen so many presentations whereby the students, the first thing they do is put their hands in their pocket because they are nervous. So what you should do instead is to keep your palms open and try to use hand gestures to elucidate and to strengthen your point. So if you want to make point number 1, point number 2, I feel very strongly. Do like this. So use your hands to help make your point. And finally, in terms of your face and your voice, so don't talk like one tone only, monotone. It's boring. It makes people sleep. And don't have a very stoic expression. What is stoic? Stoic is like muka toya in Bahasa Melayu. I don't know what it is in Indonesia. Stoic is like muka toya. You're not interested at all. You're just doing this, very bored. So remember your role as a storyteller. So believe when you're presenting, or when you're presenting a very critical fact, show seriousness. When you're presenting something that is very sad, use a lower voice. When you're excited, use a higher voice. Scream, shout, smile. When you're angry, become angry. Vary your intonation, up, down, up, down. So all these you have to try. So of course, it's not enough. I can just say these things, but I would rather show you some tips from the world champion himself. Dananjaya Hatiarachi, he is a Toastmaster world champion. Let's listen.
My dad came up to me and said, son, it's okay. You flunked your exams. You already got arrested.
One of the most important things that you need to realize is when you get nervous, you try to cover your vital organs. And that's why you would see a lot of speakers sometimes fold their hands, bring their hands in front of them, and that's a sign of nervousness. Great speakers keep their body open, so there is no barrier between you and me.
Raise your hand if you have an emotional mother. Let me see. Put them all together, you get mama.
And something that when you're starting out, you gotta be very conscious about is keep your body open. Here's tip number 2. Have your palms open. Do this exercise with me. Take a look at your palms. Turn them around. Take a look at the inside of your palms again. What side relaxes your eye? If you really concentrate, when you look at the inside of your palm, your eye relaxes. And a lot of great speakers, they open their palms towards the audience, showing a more openness. And that allows the audience to connect with the speaker better, as opposed to showing the back of your hand.
Ladies and gentlemen, today I'm a dreamer, I'm a speaker, and I learned the unfailing quality of unconditional love from my wife.
Number 3, get comfortable with the stage. When you're comfortable on the stage that you're speaking on, your body is free to move about, use body language. But if you're not comfortable with that stage, and if you feel foreign on that stage, what happens is your body language starts to constrict and you start to cover your body up.
And when a son sees a mother cry tears of shame, that's a life-changing moment. She looked at me and said, son, I want you to be a better man.
Whatever you do, don't touch the podium. As soon as you do that, you're going to be leaning on it, you're going to be shaking that podium, and you will be doing all sorts of things on the podium. So what you do is you keep a comfortable distance between you and the podium. You can keep your notes on it, but you can use your hands to gesture. Don't rest your hands on the podium. So keep a distance, and you can gesture, use body language as you want from a little distance from the podium.
My dad came.
Okay, so some great tips from the champion himself. Rather you take it from him rather than from me. Okay. But the most important tip that I can probably give is that regardless of all of that, practice, practice, practice. Practice makes perfect. You've probably seen my first video that I showed my FameLab presentation in front of all those audience and the people in the UK and the judges and so on. I've actually practiced over 100 times for that 3-minute speech. And I practice so much that I can just remember the words and it becomes second nature to me. All right. So the best thing you can do is practice, 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 practice so much. Okay. So that is the most important tip that I can give. So this is probably the last few slides. As a takeaway message, I do hope that our session today will not be the last, that you will involve yourself or immerse yourself in science communication. There are a tons of science communication platforms that we have in the world today, from the science communication competitions like FameLab and 3-Minute Thesis, and also Falling Walls Lab, even to the science communication festivals like Science Slam and even Pint of Science, that together celebrate the notion of science communication and together, communicating science among the scientists. In Malaysia, we have some wonderful science communication initiatives like est.my, Science Media Center Malaysia, and of course, Majalah Science. All of these I'm very involved with, together with my colleagues in Malaysia in science communication. So I hope that the same level, the same appreciation and interest in science communication is there in Indonesia as well. And if so, I very much look forward to collaborating with you guys for more science communication initiatives in the future. So that is all from me today, inshallah. Thank you all again for this wonderful opportunity. I do apologize for any mistakes or weaknesses on my part. Over back to you, Budian. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Dr. Zaid Omar. It's a very interesting and motivating session, and the way you present about the communication skill, it's really, really positive, and it's really nice to hear this session. Okay, so now we are going to Q&A session. So if you have a question, please write it down in the chat box so then I can read accordingly. you may also raise your hand if you want to ask a question directly to Dr. Zaid Omar. So then I will read the question that already sent to the committee. So first question, we have a 3 question here. First question is for Aulia Putri from ITS. The question, in presenting our research in a forum, how to decide which points should be highlighted? When we only have a limited time. So what is your tips, Dr. Zaid? Thank you. So Dr. Zaid, should I read all or each question and then you directly answer it?
Maybe 2 or 3 at a time.
Yeah. We have 3 questions here. So, okay, that's the first question. And then the second one from Ahmad Ainun Najib, ITS. Let's say someone start to attend a conference and he or she present the works he or she has done. For instance, here undergrad works, because my idea of science communication is you should be an expert of that field, and I'm still in the intersection of confusing. Yeah, and then the last, still in the intersection of confusion on how to start the journey of gaining. Oh, it's so long. The journey to gaining those experience. And then the last one, in Bahasa, okay, wait. So how to deal with the nervousness when we become a performer, or maybe, when we become a performer. Yes, that's the 3 question. The last one is from Stella Ilham Isnaini.
Okay, thank you for all the wonderful questions. They're very interesting questions. I'll try my best to answer them. Budian may also help out with the answer if I didn't manage to properly answer them all. So the first one is, if you have a limited time, so which points should you focus on?
Yes.
So I related to the Marie Kondoing your science. Let me just show my slide. Okay, so related to this, actually, there is an activity that I tend to do, but maybe I don't have time for this session. Is an activity called half-life. So how you do this activity is that you write your script or your abstract for your research that you want to present. Maybe it's in 500 words, maybe it's in 300 words, maybe it's in 1,000 words or whatever. Then you will compress that script into half. So if it's in 300 words, try to compress it into 150 words only. So this will actually force you to select and consider only the points that you think is the most important. So if you have 150 words, so now you have managed to compress it into 150 words, try to half it again, compress it into 75 words. So again, it forces you to select even more important, only the most important points or the most important words to be used. And again, try to compress it into maybe just 30 words. And by the end, you will have just the main, most important points that you have in 30 words that can summarize or explain your research perfectly. So from these 30 words, now you go back to 300 words and you just fill it out. So what you have done is that from your 300, which you may be writing, you don't even know what you're writing. So what you have managed to do is you have compressed and you have found for yourself, you have realized what are the most important points that I need for my presentation in 30 words. So these 30 words are the wajib, the compulsory points that I must fit into my script of 300 words and so on. And my second point to that is that, and this is an experience that I used, of course you have many points to share, many points to present. You may not be able to fit all of your points in that. My suggestion and my tip is try to leave some one or two brilliant points, one or two interesting or surprising points for the Q&A. Because anyone, presenting your talk, your Fame Lab or Viva, whatever, anyone can do that. Anyone can practice and memorize and speak for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, and so on. But most of the time, you win or lose is dependent upon the Q&A and how well you handle yourself during the Q&A. So if during the Q&A, the examiner, they ask something and you manage to sort of fit in your extra surprising, interesting, creative point into your answer for the Q&A, they will be more impressed. They will be doubly impressed. And that's what I did actually for my film lab. I managed to fit in an extra surprising nugget of points, which they really liked. Second question was to present a conference. So you feel that you're not really there yet, and you don't feel qualified to present. I can tell you that everyone feels the same way, from the most junior student to the most experienced professor. So here I am right now. I'm 38 years old. I have experience under my belt in science, in my field, in science communication, and so on. And even now, I feel a bit of nervousness. I feel that, am I the right person to do this? So there is that imposter syndrome that every researcher, every scientist, every presenter tends to feel, that I'm not good enough. There are people who are better than me. I'm going to get found out. They're going to expose me. But all of that is actually psychological in our mind. So we have to learn to block all that away. You are there because you deserve to be there. And how you seize the opportunity, seize the day, and that will determine your standing and your research later on. So try to remember about the Drone-Kruger effect, about initially when you're learning about something, you feel that you know everything about that, and then suddenly you go into a valley of maybe I don't know anything, maybe, and then you go up again and you realize that I know a bit about this, but I know that it's not everything. So if you're cognizant of that, if you remember that and keep it in mind always, you'll be fine. Number 3 is how do you prepare for nervousness when performing? So I do, for myself, I practice. And here's the thing, practicing is not just a matter of repeating. How you practice, how you repeat, practice, you have to do it very smart as well. So try practicing, of course, practicing many times, like I said here, but also practice practicing in front of friends and family. Because if you have an audience, one is that they can give you feedback and tell you where you did wrong and so on. 2 is that it removes the nervousness because you're already used to presenting in front of someone. So start small, presenting maybe in front of a mirror first, and then presenting in front of your brother or sister or roommate, and then presenting in front of your whole family. Those are maybe small steps that you can take before you present to a whole crowd audience. So those are just some tips. Maybe Budian, maybe you want to add a bit more?
Yes, we still have 2 other questions.
Okay.
Yeah, from Yulia. Dear Dr. Zaid Omar, does the clothes or something else that we're wearing can support our speech performance? What are your suggestions about it? Thank you. And then the second one, Dr. Zaid Omar, how to tackle audience during virtual presentation because it's hard to see the audience. Yeah, I think that's the last question for this session.
Okay, So I think in terms of the clothes that you're wearing during presentation, I think it's best to go with something that is a mixture between the occasion and something that you are comfortable in. So it cannot be just something that you are uncomfortable in without considering the occasion. And it cannot be just the occasion without considering something that you are comfortable in. So it has to be a mixture of both. So what I mean is that if you're just comfortable wearing jeans and t-shirt and slippers, of course, you're comfortable in it, but is it suitable for occasion of presenting in a conference? So obviously not. But maybe if you are wearing, suit and tie with blazers and too stuffy and so on, maybe it's suitable for the occasion, but maybe it's not something that you're comfortable in. So I say try to mix between the both. We have smart casual, we have, different types of dress codes. The occasions are also quite flexible. So try to go between the both. Because I have seen presentations from my students and my friends, they tend to struggle because they are wearing something that is not suitable for the equation. For the second one, tackling virtual. I'm afraid even I am stuck on this one. I think the pandemic has taken all of us by surprise, and it's affected all of us. So even things like science communication, even things like doing these seminars and so on, there's an extent we can try to present this to an extent, but of course there are going to be limitations. I am a lecturer, so later this week I have a test with my students, ujian for my subject. So even in tests we are struggling because we are afraid that the students are going to cheat with the online and so on. But that is a real concern that we don't know what to do about it. So we can just, make dua and hope that they don't resort to cheating. So I'm afraid that the situation is not ideal, but we make the best of the situation. So like this presentation, I cannot show you the entire body gesture, body language, and so on. That's quite unfortunate. That's why I decided to show you the video of Dananjaya instead. All right. Thank you, Budian.
Thank you, Dr. Omar. Okay. So time is actually we still have 3 minutes, but I think we can just finish the Q&A. And I have some highlight for this session about this. So it's not only communication skill, it's important, but moreover, we need to know about the science communication. Yeah. And it's really needed for a scientist because it's a skill and it used to convey others about our knowledge or maybe topical speaking and make them understand. And there are 5 C's of psychons that we need to bear in our head. Yeah, that's curiosity, collaboration, calmness, creativity, and courage. The last one is something. Sometimes it's very difficult, Dr. Omar. Courage.
Yes, courage. Yes.
It's we going to blank, so yeah, everything is gone. And then as a science communicator, we have to do ideologue, storyteller, and become a great salesman. And to become a great presenter, first we have to make a jargons, and then chunking up, chunking down, and then the third one is very interesting. Marie Kondo, your science. So it's mean that less is better, yeah.
Less is more.
Yeah, less is more. And then we need to do also audience profiling, research and know about the audience, and then the way we deliver the idea or the things that we want to say is also important. And yeah, don't forget to do eye contact because it's tremendously important. And then posture, filler, and hands, face and voice is also need to consider. Okay, so but then the most important tips, it's a practice makes more, practice makes perfect. Practice and keep practice. Okay, so I think that's all for me. Thank you, uh, Dr. Zaid, for your time and your support for R2SEP. It's really nice to have you here. And then thank you for all the audience, the participants that attend this session. So I give it back to Mbak Agatha as a Master of Ceremony. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Omar, for the amazing lecture today, and thank you, Ms. Dian, for conducting this amazing session. Maybe everyone please give applause to Dr. Omar and Ms. Dian by using the Zoom reaction feature. Okay, furthermore, we would like to present a certificate awarding for our honorable speaker and moderator. Okay, so okay, committee, maybe you can start the share screen to show the certificate. Okay, so this is the certificate for Dr. Omar. Thank you very much, Dr. Omar, for this amazing session.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay,
That's very
so
kind.
next,
I had a wonderful time. Thank you.
okay, thank you. So next, there is a certificate presented for Ms. Dian. Thank you for your availability on today's session.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so before we end today's session, we invite you all participants as well as the honorable speaker and moderator to take a group photo. So for the participant, please open your camera. Okay, now I will start counting down, so please give us yours with a smile. Okay, so for the first slide, I will counting down, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so for the second slide, 3, 2, 1. Okay, maybe I will, okay, so the photo session is end. So now we finish the group photo. Then for the participant, please fill the feedback form through the link bit.ly/feedback on R2SEP_2021 that you can also see on the Zoom chat room. And we want to remind you that the participant who will get the stamp is the participant who come on time, join this event under the end, and also fill the feedback form. So before we part, I would like to inform you that we still have several future agendas in R2SEP. You can see it on the poster we are showing you right now, or you can check it out in ITS Corporate Engagement website later. So we will see you in the next session with the theme Life Strategy as a Researcher that will be delivered by Professor Siti Rosaima Sheikh Abdullah from University Kebangsaan Malaysia that will be conducted on Thursday on the 24th of June 2021. Lastly, still related to research matter, we are also pleased to inform you that ITS will launch the Academic Writing Center or AWC in July. As you can see it from the poster, maybe committee you can next the poster. Okay, so as you can see it from this poster, one of the AWC service is the one-on-one consultation where ITS students and researchers can have an intensive session with a tutor to develop your English writing for research. You can book the first round by now. It's open until 27th of June 2021. So don't miss the opportunity to get direct consultation and advance for your research writing. So finally, we have reached the end of today's Researcher and Research Student Enrichment Program, and we sincerely apologize for any mistakes we may have made in presenting as Master of Ceremony and committees. Okay, thank you again, Dr. Omar and Ms. Dian, and all participants for the attention and cooperation. Maybe for the committee, you can end this meeting.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Hopefully we meet again. Assalamualaikum.
We can meet again. Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah.
Thank you again, Dr. Zaid and Budian, and also Dr. Irfan for attending today's session. Please allow me to end the meeting in 3, 2, 1. Thank you and stay safe, everyone. Have a nice day.